very clear the difference between the two types of poems there. But just to let people know that you have thought about it, and we all have to think about what we do. How do you define the difference between poetry and prose?
Well, we've already talked about line endings in free verse, and that's an obvious difference. And what happens with the line endings is that they do, or they should, make a clear break between, make a clear pause, and give you a clear way, clear vehicle to move through different thoughts. But aside from that, conceptually more, I think there is a difference between poetry and prose. To me, and this is very personal and very opinionated, but to me, poetry is magical and mysterious, whereas prose is more straightforward, realistic. It's play versus exposition. Prose can be very beautiful, but it doesn't have the kind of magic that everybody thinks when nowadays poetry is not necessarily all beautiful. A lot of poetry is very activist poetry, very there's a lot of passion and a lot of oftentimes anger, which is not necessarily mysterious or magical, but there is in poetry as a whole, there is magic behind it. Even the anger or the sorrow, especially, of course, traditionally, sorrow has a lot of times been very magical and mysterious. And also, I've thought about the two of those in terms of, there is this new age concept that some people might be familiar with, of there are only two ways of conceptualizing the world, and one of them is love and one of them is fear. Now, to me, that would kind of go into the poetry versus prose idea, especially in literature. In poetry, we're oftentimes aiming for awe and for praise, whereas in prose, especially in literature, I have taken numerous. I've been writing on prose. I've written novels and stuff, and the big term is always you have to have conflict in your prose. So I'm seeing the love versus fear, the awe versus conflict in the differences between poetry and prose.
Since we had those two really beautiful poems, let's go back and hear just a couple more from Kaleidoscope and try in our minds to hear again the poetry, why we're calling it prose poetry and not just straight prose. Okay, do you mind doing that?